A brilliant but twisted scientist becomes an evil genius, cloning an innocent girl 6 times to fulfill his twisted needs. A young bride discovers that her seemingly perfect life is built on sinister secrets engineered by the man she trusted most. What she finds behind a locked door will shatter everything. Elizabeth, a young bride, feels excited as her new husband Henry Kellenberg drives them to their new home. When they arrive at the big house on the hill, Henry carries her through the front door and gives her a tour of their beautiful home. She meets 2 other people living there, Oliver, Henry's blind son who is very talented despite not being able to see, and Claire, their quiet housekeeper. That night, Elizabeth and Henry have a romantic dinner together before going to their bedroom. The next morning, Henry surprises Elizabeth with a whole closet of new clothes, which makes her very happy. As he shows her around the rest of the house, Elizabeth notices a special door in the hallway. When she asks about it, Henry tells her that while she can go anywhere else in the house, this one room is not allowed. He makes her promise never to go inside. After she promises, they kiss in the hallway, while Claire watches them from far away. Later in their bedroom, Henry tells Elizabeth he has to leave for work tomorrow. Elizabeth doesn't want to be alone in the new house, but Henry says it will help her get used to living there. The next morning, Elizabeth wakes up alone. Feeling bored, she goes swimming in the pool and walks around the house. When she tries to ask Claire about Henry during lunch preparation, the housekeeper doesn't want to talk about him. Unable to sleep, Elizabeth spends her day doing simple things: reading, drinking chocolate milkshake, and trying on new clothes and jewelry. After taking a bath and seeing Claire and Oliver leave for the night, her curiosity about the forbidden room becomes too strong. Breaking Henry's rule, she enters the room and finds what looks like a laboratory. Inside are 6 metal drawers, each with screens showing health signs. When she pushes a button to open one drawer, she finds something terrifying: a sleeping copy of herself in what looks like a freezing chamber. Scared, she runs back to her room and tries to call for help, but there's no phone signal. Eventually, she falls into an uneasy sleep. The next day, Henry comes home and plays piano for Elizabeth. She tries to act normal but feels scared around him now. Henry notices she's acting strange and hints that he knows she went into the forbidden room, calling her a good liar. Though Elizabeth denies it, Henry suggests sending the housekeepers home so they can be alone. They spend intimate time together, but Elizabeth no longer trusts her husband and feels she's in danger. Later that night, Henry gets out of bed. Elizabeth follows and looks toward the basement's forbidden room, but Henry appears behind her saying, "Elizabeth, my pet," in a scary voice. Holding a large knife, he tells her he knows she went into the room. Terrified, Elizabeth runs away but finds all doors are locked. She hides in the wine cellar while Henry waits in the living room. Thinking it's safe, Elizabeth sneaks upstairs and grabs an iron poker from the fireplace to defend herself. Henry catches Elizabeth's foot on the stairs, making her fall. While she's on the ground, he kills her with the knife. Claire and Oliver then help him bury Elizabeth's body in the garden. They work together like they've done this many times before. After burying her, they all eat breakfast together, acting more like partners than boss and workers. Later that day, Henry's friend Logan, a detective, comes to visit. When Logan asks about Elizabeth, Henry changes the subject to Logan's work problems, giving him advice to avoid talking about Elizabeth. Meanwhile, in Claire's room, Oliver brings her flowers. She doesn't want to take them at first. Oliver asks why she stays loyal to Henry when she's unhappy, but Claire says she has something unfinished to deal with. When Oliver suggests she loves Henry, she calls him childish and finally takes the flowers to make him leave. A few weeks later, a new Elizabeth arrives at the house. Everything happens exactly the same way as before. Henry carries her inside, shows her around, and gives her wedding gifts. This Elizabeth also asks about the forbidden room, and Henry gives her the same warning, which she promises to follow. Henry enjoys another honeymoon with this new version of his bride. That night, he tells her he'll be gone in the morning, just like last time. Left alone, the new Elizabeth looks at paintings and plays dress up. When she gets bored, she breaks her promise and goes into the forbidden room. She finds the lab and sees her clone, which scares her into running away. But this time something different happens. The clone she saw opens her eyes and wakes up after being frozen for a long time. The awakened clone walks around the house without clothes, confused about who and where she is. She enters the bedroom where Elizabeth is sleeping and touches her, as if trying to understand who she is. The next morning, Henry tells Elizabeth good morning and says Claire has the day off, leaving them alone. In the bathroom, Elizabeth starts to panic about her marriage and safety. Henry comes in without asking and wets a towel, telling her he knows she went into the forbidden room. He tries to choke her with the towel, but she fights him off and runs downstairs. Finding the doors locked, she grabs a kitchen knife while Henry gets ready with some halothane to knock her out. Elizabeth stays in the kitchen, shaking with fear, while Henry goes to the piano and starts playing. He leaves the music playing on a recorder and sneaks up behind Elizabeth, pressing the chemical-soaked towel to her face. She pretends to pass out, then stabs him in the neck. They both fall to the floor, and when Elizabeth recovers, she sees Henry lying in his blood. She tries using his fingerprints to unlock the doors, but none work. With no other choice, she decides to clean up before Oliver and Claire return. After dragging Henry's body to the elevator, she cleans herself up but falls asleep in the living room, exhausted. A ringing phone wakes her up, and she quickly calls for help, saying she's trapped in the house. When she sees Oliver and Claire coming, she hangs up to avoid suspicion. She greets them normally, but they're shocked to see her alive. Claire becomes suspicious when Elizabeth says Henry is sick upstairs. He never stays upstairs or leaves Elizabeth alone, especially since he always kills the clones before long. Claire goes to the kitchen and has a heart attack when she realizes something has happened to Henry. When emergency workers arrive, Elizabeth sees a chance to escape or get help. But Oliver warns her that police will discover she killed Henry. She explains it was self-defense, and Oliver promises everything will be okay if she follows his lead. Together, they secretly bury Henry's body in the backyard. Oliver then tells Elizabeth the truth. She is part of a science experiment called biogenesis, created by Henry and Claire, who are both doctors. He explains that the Forbidden Room holds 6 identical copies of her. She is the 5th clone in the Elizabeth Harvest project. Elizabeth starts crying, unable to understand everything. Detective Logan shows up for his usual visit, forcing them to act normal. He's surprised to see Elizabeth greeting him instead of Henry, who never misses their meetings. Logan suddenly asks if she called emergency services, saying the station got a call from Mrs. Kellenberg asking for help. Oliver covers for her, explaining the emergency was for Claire, who's now in the hospital. Logan doesn't believe them and keeps asking questions. Despite being blind, Oliver perfectly aims a rifle and shoots Logan. He tells Elizabeth he doesn't feel guilty because Logan once caught one of the clones trying to escape and brought her back for Henry to kill. Oliver explains that Henry only enjoys killing the clones after reliving their honeymoon together. Elizabeth feels even more confused about who she really is, but they still need to bury Logan's body in the backyard. Oliver tells her to pack her bags, take lots of money, and run far away. While Elizabeth is packing, Oliver comes to her room and asks if she would read Claire's journal to him since he can't see. When she agrees, he tricks her and locks her in the closet. Angry that a blind boy outsmarted her, but with nothing else to do, she starts reading Claire's journal. The journal starts 5 years ago, when Henry asked Claire to join his research. He liked Claire's work on neurogeneration, even though other doctors didn't approve of their ideas. The journal reveals that the real Elizabeth, Henry's wife, died from a rare disease after giving birth to Oliver. Henry couldn't handle losing her, so he decided to make copies of Elizabeth. He hired Claire to help make the process work perfectly. After 3 years of testing, Claire finally got the right formula. They prepared the body and tried to give the clones Elizabeth's memories by playing recorded messages and music to them every night. Their first try didn't work well. The clone was confused and couldn't think properly. The journal tells about another clone who found the Forbidden Room and escaped outside, but Logan caught her and brought her back. In the present, Elizabeth knocks Oliver down when he brings her food, then forces him to tell her the door code while he's tied up. But when she tries the code, it doesn't work. She goes back to confront Oliver, but he's already escaped. Scared, she takes a knife and goes to the lab, where she finds Oliver taking care of one of the clones. He says he won't let her leave until she tells him what Claire wrote in the journal. While Elizabeth looks at her clone, Oliver sneaks up and knocks her out with drugs. Elizabeth wakes up chained to the bed, now Oliver's prisoner. She can't break free no matter how hard she tries. She keeps reading the journal, which tells how the clone Logan brought back died from not being able to breathe. Henry said he didn't know why, but Claire didn't believe him. The journal also reveals that Claire and Henry had a brief love affair. Oliver comes in with food and asks if Claire wrote anything about him in the journal. Elizabeth says no, and Oliver tells her a dark secret: Henry made him blind on purpose. It happened because Henry was jealous of Oliver's friendship with one of the clones when Oliver was young. After Oliver caught Henry hurting one of the clones, Henry attacked Oliver while he slept. Henry then lied, saying an electrical fire caused Oliver's blindness. Elizabeth reads more in the journal and finds something surprising: Claire never found any birth records for the real Elizabeth. Claire started to think Oliver wasn't really Henry's son, but instead a younger copy of Henry himself. When Claire asked Henry about this, he didn't deny it. Learning this makes Elizabeth even more scared. Later, while she's sleeping, Oliver holds a knife to her neck, desperately asking what else Claire wrote about him. Elizabeth tells him Claire's theory but says he's different from Henry and can be better. She then tries to get him to lower his guard by flirting with him, and it works. He tells her the door code. After she hits him several times, the sixth Elizabeth suddenly appears with a rifle, aiming at the fifth Elizabeth. Confused and scared, the sixth Elizabeth tells her to get down. The fifth Elizabeth finds scissors, stabs Oliver, and uses him as a shield. The new clone shoots, killing Oliver and wounding the fifth Elizabeth. Though hurt, the fifth Elizabeth tries to run outside, but the new clone shoots her fatally. Before dying, she tells the new clone to read Claire's journal. The final Elizabeth reads the journal, learning how Henry and Claire started working together. Claire discovered Henry's true plan: he just wanted to relive his honeymoon with each new Elizabeth before killing them violently. This shocked Claire, but she still helped him. In the present, Claire comes home after recovering from her heart attack. The final Elizabeth greets her, mentions the journal, and suggests Claire use her research for better purposes. After telling Claire she can keep the fancy house, Elizabeth leaves to start her own life.